The great chamber of the Galactic Senate stretched so far that the ceiling disappeared into artificial clouds. Thousands of representatives from hundreds of worlds sat in floating platforms that circled the central speaking area. Today, the chamber buzzed with nervous energy. They were here to discuss the human problem. Ambassador Chen Wei stood alone on the speaker's platform. She was a small woman with gray hair and dark eyes that had seen too many battles. Around her, alien faces stared down. Some looked worried. Others looked angry. Most looked afraid. Senator Krellix rose from his platform. He was a Vaxian, tall and covered in blue scales that shimmered under the lights. His voice boomed across the chamber. Honored members of the Senate, we can no longer ignore the danger. In just 50 years, humanity has spread across 32 star systems. They build weapons faster than we can count them. Their warships grow more deadly each year. They fight wars over the smallest disagreements. Chen Wei kept her face blank. She had expected this. Krellix continued, his voice rising with passion. 3 months ago, human ships destroyed a pirate fleet near the Outer Rim. They killed every single pirate. Not one prisoner. Not one survivor. They simply erased them from existence. A wave of concerned whispers rolled through the chamber. Chen Wei wanted to speak, to explain that those pirates had slaughtered an entire human colony, but she stayed silent. She knew it would not matter. The humans are primitives, Krellix said. They have only known space travel for 200 of their years. They still fight wars on their own planet. They carry weapons in their own cities. They teach their children to fight. They are dangerous and they are among us. High Counselor Tharn raised one ancient hand. The chamber fell silent instantly. Tharn was older than most species could imagine. His species, the Eternal Ones, had guided the galaxy for thousands of years. When he spoke, everyone listened. What do you propose, Senator Krellix? Tharn's voice was soft but carried to every corner of the massive room. Krellix's scales brightened with excitement. I propose Resolution 4477. Complete deweaponization of humanity. They must destroy their warships, dismantle their weapons factories, and convert all military facilities to peaceful purposes. We will send observers to ensure compliance. This must be done within 18 standard months. Chen Wei finally spoke. This is madness. You would leave humanity defenseless in a dangerous galaxy. We have enemies. The pirates are just one threat. There are others. You have enemies because you make enemies, Krellix shot back. Peaceful species do not need vast military fleets. Look at the Polarians. They have no military and they are safe. Look at the gentle ones of Harmony Prime. They have existed for 3,000 years without firing a single shot. The Polarians are protected by their neighbors, Chen Wei said, her voice sharp. The gentle ones live in a quiet sector where nothing ever happens. Humanity lives on the edge of known space. We face threats you cannot imagine. Then move, Krellix said simply. Move to safer systems. Abandon your frontier worlds. Live in peace like civilized beings. Chen Wei felt anger rise in her chest, but she pushed it down. Getting angry would not help. Humanity has the right to defend itself. The Senate's own charter guarantees this right to all member species. High Counselor Tharn nodded slowly. This is true. However, the charter also allows the Senate to limit military power when that power threatens galactic peace. The question before us is simple. Does humanity's military represent such a threat? For 6 hours, the debate raged. Speaker after speaker rose to condemn humanity's aggressive nature. Some defended humans, but they were few. The Zeltron spoke in favor of humanity, reminding the Senate that humans had saved them from a plague. The Korthians mentioned human bravery in battle, but most voices called for restrictions. Chen Wei spoke 3 more times, each time more desperately. She showed records of human charity, human science, human art. She explained Earth's history, how humans had learned from their violent past. She pleaded for understanding. It did not matter. When the vote came, the chamber's lights dimmed. Each representative's platform glowed either green for approval or red for rejection. Chen Wei watched as the chamber filled with green light. Like a wave of judgment, platform after platform voted yes. The final count appeared in the air above the chamber. 847 votes for Resolution 4477. 1 vote against. Chen Wei had voted alone. High Counselor Tharn stood. The Senate has spoken. Humanity has 18 standard months to comply with complete deweaponization. Observers will be assigned to monitor progress. Ambassador Chen Wei, you will deliver this decision to your government. Chen Wei bowed her head. I will inform Earth of the Senate's decision. As the Senate session ended and the platforms began to drift away, Senator Krelix approached Chen Wei. Up close, she could see that he was genuinely worried, not cruel. I am sorry, Ambassador, he said quietly, but your people are too dangerous. In time, you will understand this is for the best. Peaceful species do not need weapons. Chen Wei looked at him for a long moment. Senator, there is an old human saying, si vis pacem, parabellum. It means if you want peace, prepare for war. My people learned this lesson in blood over thousands of years. Then perhaps, Krelix said gently, it is time for humanity to learn a different lesson. Chen Wei returned to the human embassy in silence. Her staff looked at her with worried faces, but she said nothing until she reached her private office. There she activated the quantum communicator that connected directly to Earth. The face that appeared on the screen belonged to Prime Minister Okonkwo. He was a large man with kind eyes and a quick mind. He had led the United Earth Council for 12 years. They voted for deweaponization, Chen Wei said without greeting. 847 to 1. We have 18 months, Okonkwo nodded slowly. I expected this. Krelix has been building support for months. They will send observers. They want everything destroyed. Every warship, every factory, every military base, of course they do. Okonkwo leaned back in his chair. Chen, how specific was the resolution? What exact words did they use? Chen Wei pulled up the document and read the relevant sections. As she read, she saw Okonkwo's expression change. A small smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. They defined warships as vessels designed primarily for combat, Okonkwo said thoughtfully. They defined weapons factories as facilities dedicated to military production. They defined military infrastructure as installations serving primarily military purposes. Yes, Chen Wei said. Why? Okonkwo's smile grew wider. Because they told us exactly what we cannot have. They wrote very specific rules, Chen. Very specific. Chen Wei felt a small spark of hope. What are you thinking? I am thinking, Okonkwo said slowly, that humanity has spent millions of years learning to survive. We learned to use every tool, every resource, every opportunity. The Senate wants to take away our weapons. Fine, we will comply with every single word of their resolution. And then we will show them what humanity does best. We adapt, Okonkwo's eyes gleamed. Send a message to all human systems. Tell them to begin Protocol Plowshare immediately. Protocol Plowshare? Chen Wei had heard the name but did not know the details. An old human concept, Okonkwo explained. Turning swords into plowshares. Making tools of peace from tools of war. The Senate wants us deweaponized? We will enthusiastically comply. We will destroy every warship. We will dismantle every weapons factory. We will convert every military base. But Chen Wei knew there was more. But we will build something new. Something they do not have words for. Something that technically follows their rules while keeping humanity safe. Okonkwo stood. Begin the process, Ambassador. Show them cooperation. Show them compliance. And trust that Earth knows how to survive. The transmission ended. Chen Wei sat in her dark office for a long time thinking. Outside her window, the lights of the Senate district sparkled like stars. Somewhere in that city of aliens, Senator Krelix probably felt relieved. He thought he had made the galaxy safer. Chen Wei wondered what he would think in 18 months when he saw what humanity had built from the ashes of their military. She wondered if he would still feel safe. She activated her terminal and began drafting the message to Earth. As she wrote, she remembered another old human saying, "Be careful what you wish for." The Galactic Senate had wished for a deweaponized humanity. They were about to get exactly what they asked for, in ways they could never imagine. Commander Talixia had expected resistance. She had expected anger, protests, maybe even violence. Instead, she got enthusiasm. She stood on an observation platform high above Earth's largest orbital shipyard and watched as humans dismantled their greatest warship. The vessel was called Indomitable, a massive dreadnought that could destroy entire fleets. Now thousands of workers swarmed over it like insects, cutting it apart piece by piece. Beautiful, is she not? A human voice said beside her. Talixia turned her compound eyes toward the speaker. Maria Santos was the chief engineer for this facility, a small woman with dark skin and an easy smile. She seemed genuinely happy to be destroying her own people's military power. You do not mind? Talixia asked. Her translator made her clicking speech sound like standard galactic common. This ship represented tremendous power. Oh, we mind, Maria said cheerfully. But the Senate has spoken. We are members of the galactic community. We follow the rules. She gestured toward the warship. Besides, look at all that material. Perfect quality metal and components. We will use it to build new things. Talixia had been an observer for 23 standard years. She had monitored 17 different species during various Senate mandates. Never had she seen such willing compliance. It made her suspicious. What will you build? She asked. Everything, Maria said. Cargo ships, mining vessels, construction platforms, medical frigates. Humanity is expanding, Commander. We need infrastructure for our colonies. The Senate gave us a chance to redirect resources from military to civilian purposes. We are grateful. Over the next 6 months, Talixia watched humanity dismantle their military with cheerful efficiency. Warships were cut apart in orbit, their materials recycled. Weapons factories were converted to produce mining equipment and construction tools. Military bases became spaceports and research facilities. Soldiers returned home or took jobs in the booming civilian sector. The Senate received regular reports showing perfect compliance. Humanity was exceeding all expectations. But Talixia noticed things. Small things. Strange things. The cargo vessels humans built were huge, with engines far more powerful than necessary. When she asked Maria about this, the engineer laughed. Humans like to over-engineer. We build things tough. What if a cargo ship needs to escape a meteor storm? Better to have too much power than too little. The mining vessels had armor plating twice as thick as standard. Maria explained, asteroids are dangerous. Micrometeors, radiation, unexpected collisions. We protect our workers. The construction platforms had sophisticated sensor arrays that could detect objects light years away. Safety feature, Maria said. We need to know if anything dangerous approaches our construction sites. Every answer made sense. Every design had a logical explanation. But Talixia had spent her career reading between lines, and something felt wrong. She sent detailed reports to her superiors. They told her she was being paranoid. Humans are just inefficient builders, her supervisor replied. They waste resources on unnecessary features. This is their nature. They are complying perfectly with the resolution. Talixia tried to focus on the positive. Earth's military-industrial complex had truly been transformed. The numbers did not lie. 90% of Earth's former military budget now went to what they called the Expansion Initiative. Humans were colonizing new worlds at an incredible rate. They took planets nobody else wanted, worlds with crushing gravity or toxic atmospheres or extreme temperatures. They built habitats in asteroid fields. They established outposts in systems other species considered worthless. Why do you choose such difficult places? Talixia asked Maria one day as they watched construction of a new emergency response vessel. Maria smiled. Because they are available. The comfortable worlds are taken. We adapt to what we can get. Besides, difficult environments make us stronger. They prepare us for anything. Prepare you for what? For whatever comes, Maria said simply. The vessel they were watching was enormous, larger than most galactic freighters. Humans called it a Hercules-class emergency response vessel. It had massive cargo holds, redundant power systems, and hull plating strong enough to survive atmospheric re-entry. Talixia reviewed the specifications that night in her quarters. Everything was technically civilian. The vessel carried no weapons according to the Senate's definition. But it could move faster than most military ships she knew. Its power output exceeded many warships. Its hull could withstand tremendous damage. She imagined that cargo hold filled with kinetic projectiles. She imagined those engines pushing the vessel to ramming speed. She imagined that hull surviving a combat environment. Then she dismissed the thoughts. Humans were complying with the law. She had no evidence of wrongdoing, only feelings and possibilities. Meanwhile, Ambassador Chen Wei had become popular in the Senate. The same politicians who had voted to deweaponize humanity now praised her people's cooperation. Senator Krelix personally thanked her for humanity's mature response. Your people have surprised me, Ambassador, he said at a diplomatic function. I worried you would resist. Instead, you have shown wisdom. Chen Wei smiled warmly. The Senate was right, Senator. Humanity was too focused on military power. Now we focus on growth, exploration, and building a better future for our children. I am pleased to hear this. Krelix's scales showed colors of happiness. Perhaps in time humanity will be fully accepted as a peaceful member species. We hope so, Chenwei said. We truly hope so. Back on Earth, Talixia attended a public ceremony where the last military fighter squadron was officially disbanded. 10,000 pilots stood in perfect formation as they removed their military insignia. There were no tears, no protests. Instead, there was applause. The squadron leader, a young man named James Carter, gave a speech. Today we close one chapter and open another. We were warriors. Now we become builders, explorers, and protectors of a different kind. The skills we learned in service to Earth's military will now serve humanity's civilian expansion. We go forward together into a peaceful future. Talixia watched the former pilots leave the ceremony. Many of them went directly to new jobs with civilian companies. She tracked some of them out of curiosity. Most joined the crews of those massive emergency response vessels or signed contracts with mining operations, or became construction specialists. She pulled the employment records. Over 300,000 former military personnel had transitioned to civilian work in just 7 months. All of them ended up in space-based jobs. All of them worked on vessels or platforms that seemed slightly too robust, too powerful, too sophisticated. Talixia sent another report to her supervisors. Again, they dismissed her concerns. Humans are simply finding employment, they replied. This is natural and expected. Their military skills translate well to dangerous civilian work, like mining and construction. You are seeing patterns where none exist. Perhaps they were right. Perhaps she was paranoid. Talixia tried to relax and simply observe. Then she noticed the production numbers. In 1 year, humanity had built more civilian vessels than most species built in a decade. The cargo fleet alone numbered in the thousands. The mining vessels could be counted in tens of thousands. The construction platforms were everywhere humans had colonies. When she mentioned this to Maria, the engineer beamed with pride. We are an ambitious species, Commander. We have so many worlds to develop, so many resources to gather, so much to build. Why would we go slowly? But the cost, Talixia said. Where does the funding come from? From the military budget we no longer need, Maria explained. We redirected almost everything. Instead of building weapons, we build tools. Instead of training soldiers, we train engineers and pilots and miners. The Senate freed us from the burden of military spending. We are grateful. It made sense. It all made sense. But Talixia could not shake the feeling that she was missing something important. She began to study human history. She read about their wars, their conflicts, their survival. Humans had evolved on a deadly planet where everything wanted to kill them. They had spent millions of years learning to turn anything into a tool or weapon. They had survived ice ages, plagues, disasters, and their own worst tendencies. One human historical document caught her attention. It was called The Art of War, written thousands of years ago by a human named Sun Tzu. One phrase stood out: all warfare is based on deception. Talixia sat in her quarters, thinking about that phrase. She thought about humanity's enthusiastic compliance. She thought about their friendly cooperation. She thought about their massive civilian fleet that seemed designed for dual purposes. Then she dismissed the thought. Humans were following the law. They had no weapons as defined by Resolution 4477. They had no warships, no weapons factories, no military infrastructure. They only had thousands of heavily built civilian vessels crewed by former military personnel, spread across dozens of star systems capable of incredible speed and power. Talixia filed another report, this time noting her concerns more strongly. The response came back quickly and firmly. Commander Talixia, you are seeing conspiracies where none exist. Humanity is complying perfectly. If you cannot observe objectively, we will assign a replacement. Talixia stopped sending reports. The alarm that woke High Counselor Tharn in the middle of the night cycle had not sounded in 700 years. It was the sound reserved for only one thing: an extinction-level threat to the galaxy. Tharn arrived at the Senate chamber to find chaos. Representatives shouted at each other in dozens of languages. Display screens showed horrifying images from the border regions. Entire worlds burned. Fleets disappeared into clouds of debris. Order! Tharn's voice cut through the panic like a blade. What has happened? Senator Krelix stepped forward, his blue scales pale with fear. The Skrull swarm has returned. A collective gasp ran through the chamber. The Skrull were a legend, a nightmare from ancient history. They were a hive species driven by one simple purpose: consume and expand. Thousands of years ago, they had nearly destroyed the galaxy before mysteriously disappearing into dark space. Now they were back. How many? Tharn asked. We do not know, Krellick said, his voice shaking. Initial estimates suggest millions of bioships. Maybe tens of millions. They appeared simultaneously across the entire border region 3 days ago. 3 days? Tharn felt a chill. Why are we only learning of this now? Because the entire border defense network was destroyed in the first 6 hours. Another senator replied. We lost communication with 17 star systems. Every ship we sent to investigate was destroyed. The Skrull technology has evolved. They are faster, stronger, more numerous than ancient records suggested. Display screens showed what little data they had. The Skrull ships were organic, grown rather than built. They moved like schools of fish, coordinating perfectly through hive intelligence. Where they went, nothing survived. They stripped worlds of all life, consuming everything to fuel their expansion. Where are they heading? Tharn asked. A tactical display appeared showing the galaxy. A red wave spread from the border regions, moving inward. The trajectory was clear. The Skrull were heading toward the densely populated core systems where most galactic civilization existed, and Earth lay directly in their path. We must mobilize all fleets, Krellick said urgently. Every species must contribute. We need to create a defensive line. For the next week, the galaxy prepared for war. Every species that could fight sent their military forces to intercept points along the Skrull advance. The Senate's combined fleet numbered in the tens of thousands of warships, the largest military force assembled in modern history. It was not enough. The first major engagement happened at the Delta Crossing, a strategic system where 7 major trade routes intersected. The Senate fleet had 50,000 warships waiting. The Skrull came in waves. Talixia watched the battle feed from Earth. She had remained as an observer even though her job was technically complete. Now she watched in horror as the Senate fleet was torn apart. The Skrull ships absorbed weapon impacts that should have destroyed them. They coordinated attacks with terrifying precision. They adapted to every tactic. In 6 hours, the Senate fleet was destroyed. Only a handful of ships escaped. The reports that followed were devastating. Every engagement ended the same way. The Skrull overwhelmed all defenses. They learned from each battle, becoming more effective with each encounter. The ancient civilizations of the galaxy, with their advanced technology and experienced fleets, were losing. The Senate met in emergency session. Panic had replaced order. Representatives screened for solutions that did not exist. We must evacuate the core worlds, someone suggested. To where? Another replied. The Skrull are everywhere. They are spreading faster than we can retreat. We need more time, Krellick said desperately. We need to slow them down while we evacuate civilians. High Counselor Tharn studied the tactical displays. His ancient mind worked through the problem. The Skrull will reach the core systems in approximately 40 days. Their current path takes them through the human systems first. All eyes turned to Ambassador Chen Wei. She had been sitting quietly, watching the panic unfold. The human systems should be evacuated immediately, Krellick said. His fear made his voice sharp. We can send transports. Get your people out before the Skrull arrive. Chen Wei stood slowly. With respect, Senator, we decline. The chamber fell silent. Thousands of alien faces stared at her in disbelief. You cannot decline, Krellick said. This is not a negotiation. The Skrull will slaughter your people. You have no military. We destroyed it. We left you defenseless, and now you are in the path of an unstoppable enemy. You must evacuate. We appreciate the concern, Chen Wei said calmly, but humanity chooses to remain. This is suicide. Krellick moved closer, his scales showing colors of desperate fear. I know I led the effort to deweaponize your people. I take responsibility for that. But please do not throw away human lives because of pride. Let us save who we can. Chen Wei met his eyes steadily. Senator Krellick, does humanity still have the right to make our own decisions? Of course, but then we have made our decision. We will not evacuate. We will hold our position. High Counselor Tharn leaned forward. Ambassador Chen Wei, I must be certain you understand the situation. The Skrull have destroyed every fleet sent against them. They are an extinction-level threat. Your people have no military capability to resist them. What do you intend to do? Chen Wei's expression never changed. We intend to defend our worlds, Counselor. With what? Krellick's voice rose to a shout. You have cargo ships and mining vessels. The Skrull will tear through your systems in hours. Perhaps, Chen Wei said. But as you noted, Senator, humanity has the right to make its own choices. We choose to stand and fight. She looked around the chamber, making eye contact with dozens of representatives. Humanity has complied with every requirement of Resolution 4477. We have no warships as you defined them. We have no weapons factories as you defined them. We have no military infrastructure as you defined them. Her voice grew stronger. However, the Senate may wish to review the resolution carefully. We retained the right to maintain civilian assets for our safety and prosperity. We retained the right to defend ourselves. We violated no laws in preparing for the possibility that we might someday need to protect our worlds. A strange tension filled the chamber. Some representatives began pulling up copies of Resolution 4477, reading through the exact wording. What are you saying? Tharn asked quietly. I am saying that humanity has spent the last 2 years building the largest civilian fleet in the galaxy. Thousands of vessels designed for cargo transport, mining operations, construction work, and emergency response. All of them are currently in position throughout human space. Chen Wei gestured, and a display appeared showing human territory. Thousands of dots represented civilian vessels, forming a defensive network across multiple star systems. Earth respectfully informs the Senate that these civilian assets are now being mobilized for their secondary purpose. Defense against the Skrull threat. We will hold the line at the threshold system. We will buy time for the core worlds to evacuate. The chamber erupted. Some representatives shouted in confusion. Others scrambled to understand what humanity had done. Krellick stared at Chen Wei with a mixture of horror and dawning understanding. You planned this, he whispered. From the beginning. You built a military force disguised as civilian vessels. We built civilian vessels that can serve multiple purposes, Chen Wei corrected, as the resolution allowed. We did not lie. We did not cheat. We followed every rule you wrote. She paused. You just never asked the right questions. Talixia, watching from Earth, felt something cold settle in her stomach. She had been right. All her suspicions, all her warnings. Humanity had been preparing for exactly this scenario. Maria Santos appeared beside her on the observation platform. The engineer was no longer smiling. She wore a military uniform now, medals gleaming on her chest. Fleet Admiral Maria Santos. You knew, Talixia said, all along. You were never just an engineer? I was always an engineer, Maria replied. I just happened to also be an admiral. Humans are good at being multiple things at once. She looked up at the stars. The Skrull will be here in 3 days. We are ready. Ready? Talixia could not believe what she was hearing. The Skrull destroyed the Senate's finest fleets. You have cargo ships. Maria smiled, but it was not a friendly expression. Commander, would you like to see what a human cargo ship can really do? In orbit above Earth, the massive civilian vessels began to change. Cargo holds opened to reveal launch bays filled with combat drones. Mining vessels activated weapon systems that had been cleverly hidden in their industrial equipment. Construction platforms transformed into mobile factories that started producing missiles at an incredible rate. The Hercules-class emergency response vessels revealed their true nature. Each one carried enough kinetic weapons to level a city. Their oversized engines could push them to ramming speed. Their heavy armor could survive direct hits from the most powerful weapons in the galaxy. Talixia watched in stunned silence as thousands of civilian vessels across human space revealed secondary systems that turned them into instruments of war. Not warships as the Senate had defined them, but something potentially more dangerous. Purpose-built vessels that could switch between civilian and military functions instantly. How? She asked. Humans have been adapting tools for multiple purposes for millions of years, Maria explained. The Skrull swarm arrived at the threshold system exactly when predicted. They came as a living tide, millions of bioships moving in perfect coordination. Each ship was grown from organic matter, covered in armor like chitin, and armed with biological weapons that could dissolve metal and flesh alike. The Senate watched the battle through live feeds, expecting to witness humanity's brave but futile last stand. They expected the Skrull to overwhelm Earth's civilian fleet in hours, maybe minutes. They expected noble sacrifice and tragic heroism. They did not expect what actually happened. The human fleet waited in defensive formation. From the Senate's perspective, they looked pathetically outmatched. The Skrull outnumbered them 100-1, but as the Skrull approached, something changed. The cargo vessels opened their holds. Instead of trade goods, thousands of combat drones poured out. Each drone was small, fast, and expendable. They swarmed toward the Skrull like angry hornets, overwhelming the bioship's targeting systems. Admiral Maria Santos stood on the bridge of her flagship, a massive Hercules-class vessel officially designated as an emergency response ship. Around her, her crew worked with practiced efficiency. These were the former military personnel who had supposedly been demobilized. They had never stopped being soldiers. They had just changed uniforms. All vessels begin pattern Delta, Maria commanded. Show them what we built. Across the human fleet, ships activated systems the Senate had never imagined. The mining vessels revealed their true purpose. Their industrial drilling lasers, designed to cut through asteroids, fired in coordinated patterns. The beams punched through Skrull bioships like tissue paper. Their magnetic accelerators, built to launch ore containers, hurled chunks of metal at relativistic speeds. The kinetic impacts were devastating. The construction platforms had been floating in seemingly random positions throughout the system. Now they revealed their coordination. They were not random at all. They formed a manufacturing network that could produce weapons, drones, and ammunition in real time during battle. As the Skrull destroyed human vessels, the platforms built replacements. In the Senate chamber, silence replaced panic. Representatives stared at the displays in disbelief. "They are winning," someone whispered. "Impossible," Senator Krellix breathed. "The Skrull destroyed our finest fleets." "Look at their tactics," High Counselor Tharn said, leaning forward with intense focus. "They are not fighting like a fleet. They are fighting like a factory." He was right. Human warfare had evolved beyond traditional military thinking. They did not value individual ships. They valued the production system. For every vessel the Skrull destroyed, the construction platforms built 2 more. For every drone lost, 10 more launched. The humans treated combat like a logistics problem, and they were very good at logistics. The Skrull tried to adapt. They sent waves of bioships to attack the construction platforms. The platforms defended themselves with point defense systems that were technically designed for clearing space debris. Metal fragments became shrapnel clouds that shredded organic tissue. They sent ships to ram the human vessels. The Hercules-class emergency response ships activated their collision avoidance systems, which happened to include engines powerful enough to accelerate the massive vessels to ramming speed themselves. The impacts destroyed Skrull ships by the dozens. They tried to overwhelm sensors with numbers. The human sensor arrays, designed to track tiny asteroids across vast distances, had no trouble targeting millions of individual bioships. The sophisticated computers that manage mining operations now managed weapons targeting with ruthless efficiency. Talixia watched from Earth's surface, her compound eyes wide with shock. She had been right about everything, but she had not understood the scale. Humanity had not just built a hidden military. They had reimagined warfare itself. "You see it now," Maria Santos said beside her. The Admiral had returned to Earth to coordinate the broader defense. "We did not hide weapons on cargo ships. We built cargo ships that are weapons. Every system has multiple purposes. Every tool is also a defense mechanism." "But how?" Talixia asked. "How did you think of this?" "Because we had to," Maria replied simply. "The Senate took away our warships. Fine. We could not build weapons factories. Fine. We could not have military infrastructure. Fine. So we asked ourselves, what can we build that follows their rules but still protects us?" She gestured at the display showing the battle. The answer was simple. We built the most robust civilian infrastructure possible. We over-engineered everything. We made our cargo ships tough enough to survive combat. We made our mining tools powerful enough to hurt enemies. We made our construction platforms capable of building anything, including more construction platforms. "It is cheating," Talixia said weakly. "It is adaptation," Maria corrected. "Humanity learned millions of years ago that the most dangerous creature is the one that can use any tool as a weapon. We just applied that lesson on a galactic scale. On the battlefield, the Skrull were learning a harsh lesson. They had evolved to fight traditional military forces. They overwhelmed static defenses, outmaneuvered slow fleets, and adapted to conventional tactics. But humans were not fighting conventionally. A group of Skrull bioships tried to break through the human line. They faced what appeared to be a medical frigate, a vessel marked with humanitarian symbols. The bioships ignored it, focusing on what seemed like more dangerous targets. The medical frigate launched its payload. The cargo hold contained supplies for disaster relief, food, water, medicine. It also contained thousands of containers filled with refined metals from asteroid mining operations. When the magnetic accelerator launched those containers at a significant fraction of light speed, they became kinetic projectiles that obliterated everything in their path. The medical frigate's official designation was Hope's Mercy. The Skrull probably did not appreciate the irony. Another human tactic emerged. The rescue vessels moved throughout the battlefield, recovering disabled human ships. This seemed like a humanitarian effort until the Senate realized what was happening. The rescue vessels were stripping damaged ships for parts, feeding the materials directly to the construction platforms. Nothing was wasted. Every destroyed vessel became resources for new vessels. The Skrull destroyed thousands of human ships. The humans built thousands more. The battle became a mathematics problem. Could the Skrull destroy humanity's fleet faster than humanity could replace it? The answer was no. After 72 hours of continuous combat, the Skrull swarm began to retreat. They had lost millions of bioships. The humans had lost thousands of vessels, but had actually gained ships overall through continuous construction. The Skrull Hive intelligence recognized an unwinnable situation and withdrew. The human fleet did not pursue. They held the line at Threshold System exactly as they promised. In the Senate chamber, nobody spoke for a long moment. The displays showed the battlefield littered with debris from millions of Skrull bioships. The human fleet remained in formation, already beginning salvage and reconstruction operations. Finally, High Counselor Tharn broke the silence. They did not just defeat the Skrull. They industrialized warfare itself. They turned survival into a production process, another senator added, awe in her voice. Ambassador Chen Wei stepped onto the speaking platform. She looked as calm as ever, but there was steel in her eyes now. Humanity has held the line as promised, she said. The Skrull have been stopped. The core worlds are safe. We request formal recognition that we acted in self-defense and violated no Senate laws. Krellick stood slowly. His blue scales showed colors of shame and wonder. Ambassador Chen Wei, on behalf of the Senate, I must ask, did humanity plan this from the moment we passed Resolution 4477? Chen Wei considered the question. We hope for peace, Senator. We genuinely wanted to comply with the Senate's wishes. But we also prepared for the possibility that the galaxy is not always safe. We built what you asked for, a civilian infrastructure. We also built it robust enough to protect us if needed. You weaponized everything, Krellick said. We made everything capable of serving multiple purposes, Chen Wei corrected. A cargo ship carries goods. It can also carry weapons. A mining laser cuts asteroids. It can also cut bioships. A construction platform builds habitats. It can also build defense systems. We did not lie. We did not hide. We simply answered a different question than the one you asked. What question was that? Tharn asked. Chen Wei smiled slightly. You asked, how do we take away humanity's weapons? We asked, how do we protect humanity without weapons? The answers led to very different solutions. Senator Krellick approached Chen Wei. Up close, Talixia could see that he was deeply shaken. I tried to make humanity harmless. I believed violence was a choice, not a necessity. I thought removing weapons would force you to become peaceful. We are peaceful, Senator, Chen Wei said gently. We just spent 2 years building civilian infrastructure instead of making war. We trade, we build, we explore. We did everything you asked. But you also prepared for war. We prepared for survival, Chen Wei corrected. There is a difference. Humanity has learned through millions of years of evolution and thousands of years of civilization that peace is best, but survival is necessary. We can be peaceful without being helpless. 5 years after the Battle of Threshold, the Galactic Senate looked very different. Not physically, the ancient chamber remained unchanged, but the thinking inside it had transformed completely. Ambassador Chen Wei sat in a new position now. She was no longer just Earth's representative. She was the Secretary General of the Galactic Senate, elected unanimously 3 years after humanity saved the core worlds. The same politicians who had voted to deweaponize humanity now look to humans for security guidance. Today's session was about the new paradigm. Senator Krellick stood to present the proposal. His scale showed colors of determination mixed with humility. 5 years ago, this Senate made a decision based on fear. We saw humanity's military power and demanded they abandon it. They complied with our law while teaching us a profound lesson. Today, we propose making that lesson official policy for all member species. The proposal appeared on displays throughout the chamber. It was called the Dual-Purpose Infrastructure Initiative. The core concept was simple but revolutionary. Every species would be encouraged to build civilian infrastructure that could serve defensive purposes if needed. Humanity showed us that weapons and tools are the same thing, Krellick continued. The difference is only in application. A species with robust civilian infrastructure is both more productive in peace and more capable in crisis. We propose that the galaxy adopt this thinking officially. There was some debate, but less than Chenwei expected. The battle against the Skrull had changed minds. Species that had trusted in dedicated military forces had seen those forces destroyed. Species like humanity with adaptable civilian systems had survived and thrived. The vote passed easily. The galaxy would rebuild itself around the human model, but not everyone was happy about the changes. A delegation from the Polarian Confederation requested to speak. The Polarians were a peaceful species, exactly the kind Senator Krellick had once held up as an example for humanity to follow. Secretary General Chen Wei, their representative, began. We respect humanity's achievement, but we worry about the militarization of civilian life. Our species has lived peacefully for thousands of years. We do not want to become warriors. Chen Wei nodded with understanding. The initiative does not require militarization. It requires preparation. There is a difference. She gestured to a display. Look at humanity's current fleet. Right now, this moment. We have 5,000 cargo vessels moving goods between systems. We have 10,000 mining vessels extracting resources. We have 2,000 construction platforms building habitats. All of them are doing civilian work, generating prosperity and growth. The display updated. If a crisis occurred, those same vessels could transition to defensive roles within hours. But in the absence of crisis, they remain tools of peace and prosperity. The Polarians could do the same. Build mining vessels that are slightly more robust than necessary. Design cargo ships with redundant systems. These choices make you safer without making you aggressive. The Polarian representative still looked uncertain. But what if having these capabilities makes species more willing to use violence? What if preparation becomes provocation? It was a good question. Chenwei had wrestled with it herself. Before she could answer, an unexpected voice spoke up. High Counselor Tharn rose from his platform. The ancient being rarely spoke anymore, preferring to let younger voices lead. But when he did speak, the galaxy listened. I have lived for 3,000 years, Tharn said, his voice soft but carrying through the chamber. I have seen wars destroy civilizations. I have seen peace movements rise and fall. I have seen species choose violence and species choose submission. I thought I had seen every approach to survival. He looked directly at Chenwei. Humanity taught me I was wrong. They showed us a middle path I had not imagined. Not peace through weakness and not safety through aggression, but survival through adaptability. Tharn turned to the Polarian representative. You ask if preparation leads to provocation. I answer only if a species lacks wisdom. Humanity has weapons capable of destroying worlds. They have used them only in defense. They could dominate the galaxy militarily. Instead, they build and trade and explore. They are prepared for war but committed to peace. He sat down slowly. That is the balance we all must find. The Polarian representative bowed. Thank you, Counselor. We will consider this carefully. As the session continued, other topics emerged. Multiple species wanted humanity's help redesigning their infrastructure. The Zeltrons wanted advice on making their medical ships more resilient. The Korthians wanted human engineers to review their mining operations. Even species that had voted for humanity's deweaponization now sought human expertise. After the session, Chenwei walked through the Senate district. The city had changed too. Human architecture was becoming popular. Designs that emphasized redundancy and multiple functions. Buildings that could serve as shelters in emergencies. Transportation systems that could be repurposed for evacuation. Parks that doubled as food production areas. The galaxy was learning to think like humans. Talixia found Chen Wei in a quiet garden overlooking the city. The former observer had become something of a friend over the years. She now worked as a liaison between the Senate and human systems, helping other species understand humanity's approach. "Do you ever regret it?" Talixia asked. "The deception, the hidden preparations?" Chen Wei smiled. "We did not deceive, Commander. We adapted. And no, I do not regret it. If we had refused the Senate's demands, we would have been forced out of the galactic community. If we had truly disarmed, the Skrull would have destroyed us. We found a third path. You made everything a weapon," Talixia said. "We made everything a tool," Chen Wei corrected gently. "Whether something is a weapon or a tool depends on how you use it. A hammer can build homes or break skulls. The hammer itself is neutral. The intent matters." She looked out over the city. Humanity spent our early history fighting each other. We learned every way to kill, every way to destroy. But we also learned something more important. We learned that the same tools that destroy can also create. The same fire that burns villages also warms homes. The same metal that makes swords also makes plows. The Senate wanted you to give up the swords, Talixia said. So we did. We just kept the metal in the forges. When we needed swords again, we had everything necessary to make them. Chen Wei turned to face Talixia directly. The galaxy wanted us harmless. We showed them we could be peaceful without being helpless. There is a difference. Elsewhere in the city, Admiral Maria Santos met with defense ministers from 7 different species. They wanted to learn humanity's tactics, understand the philosophy behind dual-purpose infrastructure. Maria explained it patiently. "Stop thinking about weapons and start thinking about capabilities," she told them. "A weapon is specific and limited. A capability is flexible and multi-purpose. Your cargo ships need good engines anyway. So why not make them excellent engines that could also maneuver in combat? Your mining lasers need to be powerful. So why not make them powerful enough to cut anything? These improvements make you better at civilian work while also making you more resilient." "But the cost?" one minister objected. "Building everything to such high standards is expensive." "More expensive than losing a war?" Maria asked. "More expensive than being helpless when crisis comes?" Humanity chose to invest in quality infrastructure. It made us prosperous in peace and unbeatable in war. That seems like good value. The ministers took notes eagerly. The human way of thinking was spreading through the galaxy like a virus, but a beneficial one. Species were becoming more productive and more secure simultaneously. Back on Earth, life had returned to normal. The Hercules-class emergency response vessels were back to their primary purpose: disaster relief. When a colony suffered environmental catastrophe, these vessels arrived with food, shelter, and reconstruction equipment. When the Polarian homeworld faced a plague outbreak, human medical frigates provided treatment and quarantine facilities. The galaxy was learning that humanity's weapons could heal as easily as they could harm. The same cargo holds that carried kinetic projectiles in battle now carried medicine and food. The same construction platforms that built missile factories now built schools and hospitals. But everyone knew the truth. If another Skrull swarm emerged, if another crisis threatened the galaxy, humanity's civilian fleet could transition to war mode within hours. The tools of peace could become instruments of survival without hesitation. Senator Krellix visited Earth for the first time since the vote 5 years ago. Chen Wei met him at the spaceport. The Vaxian had aged in those years. His scales less bright, his movements slower. "I came to apologize properly," he said without preamble. "I tried to make you harmless because I was afraid. I thought violence was a choice, not a necessity. I was wrong." "You were not entirely wrong," Chen Wei replied. "Violence is often a choice. Humanity made that choice too many times in our past. But survival is not a choice. It is a necessity. You helped us find a way to be both peaceful and prepared. In that sense, Resolution 4477 was the best thing that happened to humanity." Krellix looked surprised. "How so?" "It forced us to think differently. If you had left our military alone, we would have remained a traditional power with traditional limits.